Okay, well, I want to welcome everybody to our monthly fireside gathering where we use the teachings of Baha'u'llah to discuss important topics. And here with us tonight, I'm so excited, we have Jacqueline Claire, a Baha'i from Texas. Jacqueline Claire is a spiritual realism artist, storyteller, and author, and host of Spiritual Conversations on podcast, which helps audiences awaken to life as a spiritual journey. And if I may ask, Jackie, and correct me if I'm wrong, aside from being an artist, you have done a little bit of theater as well. Did I see you on a show, TV show, maybe?
I am a recovering actor. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Yes. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Well, without further ado, I would love to turn this over to in the order that we've discussed, Shelley.
All right, so we're just gonna have a song and a prayer and a couple of quotes read by a couple of children. Now, who are the children reading for us tonight? Stuart, it's
So we have Ethan is reading one quote and Marissa's reading the other, and Cameron's going to say a prayer as well.
okay. So after Rudy, I guess, right? Rudy, are you saying a prayer also?
Well, I'll start off after the song.
After the song. So kids after Rudy, and then when the kids are done, Jackie will do her presentation. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So mute if you're not speaking, okay?
Us divided, separately we are not free. No, no, this fight is not one-sided. I need you and you need me. Not black, not white, no stripes, it's all in what you see. We know what's right, let's fight this change we cannot achieve. Together we can stand up, rise up, restore our love. I guarantee there ain't nothing that's different between us. One man, one blood, I do believe. Will you stand beside me? All alone, I cannot win. Oh, my brother, I can guide you. The same blood runs through our skin. Just take my hand, we can rebuild all the broken. I am a man like you, help me. Let's start again. Together we can stand up, rise up, restore our love. I guarantee there ain't anything that's different between us. One man, one blood, I do believe. The world is spinning round, but I can see the light. And if we look around, there's hope for love inside. Oh no, it won't be easy. There's murder and there's pride. Oh, oh, but I won't be afraid. I'm standing for my rights.
O thou kind Lord, this gathering is turning to thee. These hearts are radiant with thy love. These minds and spirits are exhilarated by the message of thy glad tidings. O God, let this American democracy become glorious in spiritual degrees, even as it has aspired to material degrees, and render this just government victorious. Confirm this revered nation to upraise the standard of the oneness of humanity, to promulgate the most great peace, to become thereby most glorious and praiseworthy among all the nations of the world. O God, this American nation is worthy of thy favor and is deserving of thy mercy. Make it precious and near to thee through thy bounty and bestow.
God has given man the eye of investigation by which he may see and recognize truth. He has endowed man with ears that he may hear the message of reality and conferred upon him the gift of reason by which he may discover things for himself. Ye are all leaves of one tree, and the fruit of one branch. By this it is meant that the world of man is like a tree, that the nations or peoples are the different limbs or branches of that tree, and the individual human creatures are as the fruits and blossoms thereof.
Remembrance of thee is my melody. Nearness to thee is my hope, and love for thee is my companion. And mercy to me is my healing and my succor in both this world and the world to come. Thou really art, they are bountiful, they are known, they are wise. Baha'u'llah.
That was beautiful. Is it me now, Shelley?
That's right, Jackie, go on.
Awesome, awesome. So first off, I just want to know if anyone here is new to the Baha'i faith, or if everyone is pretty familiar with the Baha'i faith. You could, I can't see. So if anyone's new, you could like say something, and if not, oh, okay. It doesn't seem like we have any newbies. In which case I'll shorten that part of the presentation, and then we can have more time to actually deepen on this topic. Awesome, you guys. So happy to be here. What I'm going to do is share, what I have researched and put together on this topic, and go through some slides and then open it up for consultation and your thoughts, and to bounce back and forth and learn from each other. But first I'll go through with this. And I wanted to start with what really attracted me to this topic, like what it was that made me really want to dive in. I was raised a Baha'i, I've always been a Baha'i, and I've always, as Kevin said earlier, done my best, right, to honor this principle, this law really in our faith. But it was early 2019, and I was reflecting on the state of polarization. And, for any of you who watch my videos or listen to my podcast, I'm always sort of like trying to see from different angles of a situation. And I was reflecting on how there's this increasing distance between points of view, you know, and increasingly sort of more of a digging in of heels, you know, stretching out and digging in of heels. And that it seems that it's kind of like whatever quote unquote side of different opinions or ideological disputes seems to think that the other quote unquote side is brainwashed or cuckoo or unintelligent, or, you know, you name it. And so frequently I was seeing like social media posts that were like, you know, unfriend me if you know, support this, or no friend of mine would believe this. And I was thinking, you know, if we get further and further into our own echo chambers and we think more and more lowly, our opinions are lowered of people who see things differently than us, then how are we going to come together and consult and find our common ground and actually find solutions to all of the issues that we care about? And I was like having my morning coffee and I was doing my morning devotions, and I just opened up this Baha'i compilation, Divine Art of Living. And I just opened it up to this passage that says, if any soul speak ill of an absent one, and I feel like we have a definition there of backbiting, speaking ill of an absent one. Abdu'l-Baha says the only result will clearly be this: he will dampen the zeal of the friends and tend to make them indifferent. For backbiting is divisive. It is the leading cause among the friends of a disposition to withdraw. And I thought, that's it. We have like a backbitten culture. We're like suffering the consequences of this permission that we have given to talk bad about other people. Whether it's, you know, children on the playground, whether it's, you know, the break room at work, whether that's, you know, within families, especially social media, even the tone of our news, you know, and our visual media. Like, we just want information and we kind of get backbiting. There's like this backbiting, gossipy flavor to it all. And I think we see the results of it in our whole culture. So that was where my interest really was born. And now I'm going to take you through on a journey of some quotes that I've put together and some thoughts on this topic. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, everyone still with me? I can't see you, so you have to say something.
Yes.
Okay, groovy. Okay, so I'm going to move past the part about the Baha'i faith, since you guys already know and love the faith. And of course, the prohibition of backbiting is one of our beautiful laws in the faith that Baha'u'llah has given us to move forward our ever-advancing civilization. And we know this is the day in which God's most excellent favors have been poured out upon man. We are so blessed, and we have such a responsibility to be living in this precious day and age. It is incumbent upon all the peoples of the world to reconcile their differences, and with perfect unity and peace, abide beneath the shadow of the tree of his care and loving kindness. And of course, to facilitate this is the purpose of our spiritual and religious laws. And everyone here, I know, accepts that. But, you know, for some people, there's like a knee jerk about the idea of like a law, spiritual law, just, you know, sounds like a bummer maybe. But I think anyone you showed this next quote to would say, oh my gosh, I feel this. Chaos and confusion are daily increasing in the world. Have you guys noticed that? And Baha'u'llah says they will attain such intensity as to render the frame of mankind unable to bear them. And it is then when men will be awakened and become aware that religion is the impregnable stronghold and its laws, exhortations, and teachings, the source of life on earth. So this is why we have been given laws such as the prohibition against backbiting. Now we've already mentioned, backbiting is very common. We all gave in to reality TV several years back, which is like, all backbiting, and now it's like taken over the flavor of everything, it feels like. And it can start very innocent. And frankly, you guys, it's very easy to do, right? You just open your mouth and say the wrong thing. So how bad can it really be, right? Well, here are just some of the things that the Baha'i writings say about backbiting. The worst human quality, the most great sin, the cause of divine wrath. It has a foul smell. It's divisive. It is the most hateful characteristic. And as Britt quoted for us earlier, it extinguisheth the life of the soul. It quencheth the light of the heart, and it makes one accursed. And the one perhaps I find the most terrifying is this one. It makes the dust to settle so thickly on the heart that the ears hear no more, and the eyes no longer behold the light of truth. And my understanding of this is that backbiting actually impedes our own ability to see the truth. And that is a sacred connection we have, right? How the light of revelation, and answers to prayers and that sort of thing sort of moves through our own truthometer, right? No longer behold the light of truth. And so some of you might think, well, I would never say something that wasn't true, right? It's okay if it's a true criticism or complaint, right? But Shoghi Effendi, he knows all our loopholes. He says, even if what is said against another person be true, the mentioning of his faults to others still comes under the category of backbiting and is forbidden. And just in case we didn't get it, he reminds us that this condemnation of backbiting could hardly be couched in stronger language. It is obviously one of the foremost obligations for Baha'is to set their faces against this practice. So, okay, maybe we're a little bit convinced now. So why is it so bad? This just opening your mouth and saying the wrong thing, speaking ill of one who is not physically in your presence. Well, first off, it's easier than putting into practice of love, constructive words, and cooperation. It's the easy way out. It's a cheap catharsis, in my opinion, of actually seeing where you can affect change. And as Baha'is or people who love the Baha'i faith, we know that, well, I'll just show you. We're here to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization, to actually speak loving words and move constructive initiatives forward and find solutions. This is part of the purpose of our very existence. All men have been carried forward, have been created to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. And Shoghi Effendi reminds us also that those fault-finding energies actually can serve a healthy purpose when we look at our own actions, our own behavior, our own inner life, and think how we can improve. And he says the task of perfecting our own life and character is one that requires all our attention, our willpower and energy. If we allow our attention and energy to be taken up in efforts to keep others right and remedy their faults, we are wasting precious time, by which he's referring to our lives, right? The purpose of our lives. And another very fascinating and mystical dimension to this is Baha'u'llah likening the tongue to a smoldering fire. And that material fire, you know, that really hot stuff that burns buildings and can kill people, he says that lasteth but for a time, whilst the effects of the latter, the effects of our speech, endureth a century. And, you know, you guys may have a variation of understandings of this. Personally, I don't think this has anything to do with technology, you know, like recordings of our voice or anything like that. I shared this quote with some Baha'i musicians, and they were very astounded by it and thought maybe that was some dimension, and maybe it is. But I think it's a mystical promise that Baha'u'llah is telling us that our words matter. And our words have an effect for a century. And this is the quote I read to you earlier. If any soul speak ill of an absent one, the only result will clearly be this: he will dampen the zeal of the friends and tend to make them indifferent. And that's interesting, the only result, because when we engage in backbiting, usually that is not our intention, right? We're not like, I really want to dampen the zeal of the friends and make people indifferent. I think often we're looking for a sense of intimacy. We're looking for a sense of community. Like we have something in common. We both don't like these people, right? Or we want to share in a joke, or we want to make ourselves feel superior. And in this trifecta, if you will, there's always a triangle when you backbite. There's the person speaking, there's the person listening, and then there's the person or the group that you're talking about. And I believe that in that situation, trust between all three parties is damaged. And it says, backbiting is divisive. It is the leading cause among the friends of a disposition to withdraw. And I think it also bears mentioning here that it was already mentioned about social media and how it's designed around very clipped, short, you know, witty statements and that sort of thing. And the algorithms also feed into division and conflict. So there's also like a raising of anything that would be disunifying. So we should always keep that in mind too. And sometimes, you know, people are just looking for like a sense of community or the dopamine hit of getting likes, you know, but ultimately it is divisive and it causes people to withdraw. So, but what if somebody else is doing it, right? What do we do? Well, I bet a lot of you know the answer. It is obvious that if we listen to those who complain to us about the faults of others, we are guilty of complicity in their backbiting. We should therefore, as tactfully as possible, but yet firmly, do our utmost to prevent others from making accusations or complaints against others in our presence. And I think for many of us, this is the most challenging part. And I think we'll get more into this in the consultation about what are some ways that we can tactfully yet firmly prevent others from drawing us into their backbiting, because we know how damaging it is for them as well as for us and the soul being talked about. So what should we do instead? Well, several ideas here that I'm going to share from the writings. First off, as encouraged as we are to praise without distinction, I would encourage you to praise people directly to their face. Because even Abdu'l-Baha says, stories repeated about others are seldom good. A silent tongue is safest. Even good may be harmful if spoken at the wrong time or to the wrong person. And I'm sure all of you can relate to that. You know, it can stir jealousy. It can feel like you're saying someone has praiseworthy qualities versus other people, or, you know, there could be more complexity to the situation, you know. So consider just elevating the discussion and trying not to talk about people at all. Yeah, I know it's counterculture, but this is some advice from Abdul Baha. Also, of course, we love the creatures for the sake of God and know that there are imperfections in every human being, and you will always become unhappy if you look toward the people themselves. But if you look toward God, you will love them and be kind to them. And I believe that looking toward God also, means thinking of God, thinking of Baha'u'llah, praying and asking to be helped with this. Please help me to love the creatures for your sake. Please help me to see the good in them. Please help me to be able to rise above these discussions that I know are not pleasing to you. And I love this one so much. And I think this is the remedy that the world needs for this state of, division that we find ourselves in. When you meet those whose opinions differ from your own, do not turn away your face from them. All are seeking truth, and there are many roads leading thereto. Truth has many aspects, but it remains always and forever one. Do not allow difference of opinion or diversity of thought to separate you from your fellow men, or to be the cause of dispute, hatred, and strife in your hearts. Rather, search diligently for the truth and make all men your friends. Whee! And then everyone is friends. So I'm going to end my screen share and just add a few more thoughts. Have I made it through the teleportation portal here? Are we still together? Yeah.
We are still together.
Awesome. Just a few more thoughts that I wanted to add and then reiterate here. There are writings from the house that, backbiting does not prevent the prohibition against backbiting does not prevent you from reporting a crime, right? If you see someone breaking into your neighbor's house, that's not backbiting to report that, or anything else that would fall under that category. So, of course, if there are real issues, there are outlets for you to deal with them or talk to your LSA if there's an issue. And I think that's really key. When we take away that, what I call the cheap catharsis of backbiting, just complaining about someone, when we no longer have that outlet, then we have to face the situation and think, okay, maybe I'm seeing this issue. Maybe it's a test for me, or maybe there's something constructive that I can do about it. So it gives us an opportunity to practice virtues like courage and tact if we decide to address whatever the concern is with someone, discernment, justice, seeing with our own eyes. And if it's something that you feel powerless about, like a policy that you're upset about or something like that, I would similarly urge that rather than, complaining on social media, and also Baha'is that often can get dangerously close to talking about partisan politics and stuff, to think, well, who could I take this up with that it might make a difference, right? Who could I write? Who could I call? How could I address this? I think a good rule of thumb, if we don't want to backbite, maybe think about facing something, face on, back versus face, right? And finally, I think that element about truth is really, really important, that it can impede our own ability to recognize truth when we are practicing and immersed in backbiting. And I think of it sort of like cholesterol in our arteries. If we care at all, if we give any consideration to not wanting some sort of blockage in our arteries, right? That how much more so our spiritual connection, right? That life vein of spiritual connection, which I think is, our truth vein, So that is what I have prepared for you guys. I would love your thoughts and your questions, and we can learn and explore them together.
Well, I'm interested in the part where if we're having a conversation with someone that's non-Baha'i, and how would we tell that person in a tactful way of saying that maybe we shouldn't have this discussion, this type of discussion. So how would we go about doing that?
Mhm.
I think that's the right thing to say. That's the right thing to say. Maybe we shouldn't be having this discussion.
It's basically, even if the person is like insisting that they need to just tell their side of, how they might feel about this particular person. I've always thought that one reason why a person might start gossiping about another person is that they need to confirm themselves. They need confirmation of whatever that they're thinking about this other person. They need to bounce it off another person to say, right, is that right? And so and then it's confirming to that person. And so, yeah.
It's an interesting point. Don was also going to reply to that.
Yeah, just one option that's worked for me on occasion is to simply come out with a strong statement of positivity towards the person they're criticizing. They're talking about John, you say, but boy, he sure does know Linux if he's a computer guy, or he sure is a snappy dresser, or I love his sense of humor. So just say something that compliments the person that's being, backbitten. And just that positive energy sometimes will, people will agree with that and say, yeah, they'll make a comment about the positive aspect instead of the negative. But there's other times where if it's going on and it's a continuing issue, I think as Rosalind said, to just confront it head on and say, this is not constructive.
That's so great. And one reason why I love talking about this topic with people is because I learned so much from you guys. It's very challenging. And I appreciate both of those suggestions very much. The straightforward, like maybe we shouldn't be having this discussion, or also trying to sort of make up for the backbiting, right? By offering a word of praise about the person, also showing that you don't want to indulge in the negative talk. One suggestion that I've also heard from a friend is to, acknowledge whatever that person who's venting. Say, I'm sorry that you are suffering, or I'm sorry that you have been hurt, or that you feel stuck in the situation, whatever. Like I feel your pain, but I don't want to backbite. If you want to like actually consult about this, like I would be happy to do that with you. It depends on your relationship, but consultation, you actually say prayers ideally, and it's actually aimed towards like, what is an action, what can resolve this situation. So, to let them know you hear them, but you're there if they want something more constructive, but you're not gonna backbite. I've also found when I just tell people like, oh, I'm trying not to backbite, sorry, like, or even if I can tell that's where it's going, people are usually pretty responsive to that. It's sort of like, oh, you know what, I don't want to be backbiting it either,
Yeah, I think just to call it for what it is, a lot of people at the moment wouldn't think that they were backbiting, but when you say, wouldn't it be better if we don't backbite, then it makes them think about it,
John or Lynn, you wanted to speak? Your hand is up.
Yes, I actually have a question. I'd like to hear some suggestions. How would you deal with the situation where you have been asked or you are counseling the victim of a wrong, and they have been hurt by a third party. How do you counsel them without addressing the situation in which they were wronged? How do you help them heal their hurt without understanding and discussing the hurt that they have received from a third party? That's a situation I find particularly hard to deal with when trying not to backbite, because there are people who have done real hurt.
Are you talking about counseling in a professional setting or just like with a friend or like in
No,
a
just with a friend. Consulting with a friend and helping someone through a difficult situation where they are the victim and might not even necessarily see themselves as victims. How do you avoid talking about the situation that caused such pain? And in talking about it, you have to evaluate what was done to them.
Does
Can I
anyone
hop
have,
in?
please, Kevin?
So that's something that I deal with a lot, both professionally and personally. Professionally, I am a therapist, so that's a lot of listening to people vent, and but that's a professional thing, that's different. But in my personal life, I'm in a band, and that's just chaos. It's hard to get a group of people together that work so closely together so much, have all those personalities, and there's constantly some sort of issue happening, right? Somebody's feelings are hurt, somebody doesn't agree with this, and I've kind of become the one that ends up mediating. And in those situations, things have happened, people's feelings are hurt. And it's an opportunity though to resolve that, right? Like, to steer that conversation, if you're the one counseling, quote unquote, that person, to kind of steer them towards understanding and a resolution to the situation. I think that's different than just, complaining or, talking bad about somebody. I think if we just kind of shut down anything negative, that misses a huge opportunity for growth and connection and healing.
I'm glad you mentioned the word healing, because what I have done in the past is try to evaluate what is the path to greater unity and what is the path to healing. And if that requires a discussion of justice where you clearly describe what another person has done is wrong, I think in my own heart, that's the only way I can think of it, is you are heading for healing and greater unity by expressing truth and justice.
Yeah, and sometimes not exploring it or talking about it, that person will just have it fester, and then everything falls apart. So I don't know, that's just my approach.
So we have the option of consulting with our assembly. If we're concerned that discussing it with another private individual might be backbiting. If you bring it with the intention of resolving disunity to the assembly, whatever you say in confidence is in that environment is not backbiting, in my opinion.
And often there are ways to discuss issues and actual, events and, things without naming names. And I guess that could be a little bit of a gray area. Maybe you kind of know who's being discussed. But I would say like in a assembly meeting, if you did present an issue, you could definitely do it without using it just as an excuse to talk bad about someone, you know what I mean? Like, and it's possible that the people counseling you and listening wouldn't even know who you were referring to. So you can, I'm getting kind of clunky with my speech, but you can speak about a traumatic encounter or something you're frustrated with or something without being terribly specific. And even if you are, perhaps if you're not just doing it for sport and you're not just trying to beat up on someone's character, you're actually talking about how to heal and move forward from something that happened, which maybe starts with fully acknowledging what happened. I think that's up to the individual, but I don't think that that's backbiting. That is a step towards healing, and you're not just, trying to beat up on someone spiritually.
I think in the past we've discussed the motive behind discussion is really, really important. Is it pure?
Mm-hmm.
Is it for unification, or is it to slander someone?
Mm-hmm.
Shelley, you had your hand raised.
Yeah. So I just wanted to speak to that conversation quickly, that I think that some of the complicated issues that we're discussing here will need to be resolved by the administration in the future. I think a lot of it's not going to be very easy for us to handle as individuals, except to share our beliefs and whatever others have said about focusing on unity and healing. I think it's going to be a flawed system until the Baha'is are, we can turn to our Baha'i administration to resolve some of these things. But I wanted to raise a different topic, and Jackie, I'd love to hear what you think of this, but I have been feeling that that just public discussion of public affairs or public people is the same as if we were talking about someone you know. And I'm feeling, I feel it contributes to a huge amount of disunity. And I feel the same way about it if you're talking about someone you work with or you're talking about someone you're watching on TV. I don't think we should be talking that way. And I feel like people aren't, I think it's the same. So what do you think, Jackie?
I agree with you, Shelley. I think, I've heard it, argued by people who maybe aren't Baha'is that, if we weren't talking about them, they wouldn't be famous, right? It's what they want. It's okay. It's the life they chose. And Ahmed Baha says, if you speak ill of an absent one, and
right.
And I think that, again, it's not just about that, famous person whom you may never have an encounter with. It's also the way it affects the hearts of the other people around who read it, who hear it, who may see it differently, who may agree, but think that was a really ugly statement. Like, that's what, I feel like we're suffering from the true epidemic of backbiting, for sure. I think it counts.
Okay, we have Stuart, Sam, and then John and Lynn.
So I think that for me, it keeps coming back. I keep coming back to the quote where talking ill about an absent one is backbiting. That doesn't have a caveat saying, if depending on what you're thinking about it or what your intention is, it's pretty black and white. The protection that our institutions give us in these situations, where that is the role of the institutions. If there's an issue that needs to be addressed, it's the institution's responsibility to address it, not an individual's responsibility to address it. Unless it's one-on-one, you're going to that person to address the issue that you have with them. And even within the assembly, once the assembly is no longer meeting as the assembly, the members of the assembly are no longer protected by that cone of silence, if you will, that the assembly, the blessing that the assembly meeting confers upon them, and the authority that they have to have that discussion and those deliberations, that consultation, that makes it not backbiting, but an institution addressing an issue. That's just my point of view, my understanding.
Well said.
Sam? Did you have something?
Sam, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I think there's also a law that's before, I feel backbiting and fault finding are secondary, and the primary is to have a sin covering eye. I mean, when you skip that step, you're persistent onto moving into fault finding and backbiting. And the sin covering eye feeds into even gossip and so on. And I recall a story where Abdu'l-Baha heard of this woman who was serving in his house, that she's constantly gossiping. So one day he calls her into his chamber and says, I want you to prepare me a chicken for soup, chicken soup. So she goes out to the yard, grabs one of the chicken, and sorry for the vegans in the group. She kills the chicken, defeathers the chicken, and starts cooking it. And as she's doing this, the master yells out and says, bring the feathers to me. And sure enough, she brings the feathers to him. And he says, I want you to go down the road and distribute those feathers all the way to the end of the road. So she goes out to the road, grabs the feathers, starts spreading them around, and then comes back to the master and says, I've done what you've asked me. And he said, good, now go and collect them back. And she looked at him and she said, that's impossible to do. The wind have taken them everywhere. And he said, so is gossip. Because once the word leaves here, right, you don't know how far the wind will take it. And as Baha'is, when you step out of the sin covering eye, wind is everywhere.
Wow.
I like that story.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it every time I cook chicken.
That's such a great reminder also, Sam, that if we don't first practice having a sin covering eye, then the temptation is so much greater to gossip, right? And to backbite. We would actually be making our lives easier if we first addressed, our own thoughts and perceptions of other people, and then it would make upholding that actionable element of it that much easier. Such a great point.
So Jackie, to that point, can you offer any suggestions about that particular piece, the sin covering eye piece, especially nowadays? Very
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm not an expert on this, but I do love these discussions, and I have deepened on this. Most of us know that story that Abdu'l-Baha tells, the Christ story about looking for the good quality, even if there's one, compared to the 10 bad qualities. And that, Christ and his believers passed a dead, rotting dog, and everyone was like, oh my God, it smells so terrible. And oh my God, it's so hideous looking. And Christ found the one good thing, which was its teeth. And he said, but look how white and gleaming its teeth are. So that's an example of the 10 to 1 rule, right? Or the 1 to 10 rule. Like, make it a practice to look for the good qualities in people, even if they're really hard to find, like a dead, rotting dog. But check out the teeth. and also, you know, to pray about it. God, please help me to have a sin covering eye. Please help me to see people the way you see them, or, you know, that sort of thing, like how, whatever words feel right. But sometimes we forget that easy, simple step of just articulating it and putting it in a prayer. I love to know if other people have thoughts about increasing our ability, our practice of seeing with a gracious and sin covering eye.
I wanted to know then, that means we can't look at unauthorized autobiographies, right? Or biographies. That's what it sounds like.
Interesting.
Mm.
Yeah, that's where all the juicy stuff is, right? The
Mhm.
gossip is all the juicy stuff.
I mean, I know myself, having read those books, and other Baha'is too. And then, you know, are we passing these books around, and that's not helping our spiritual nature, I guess.
Good point.
Carol, go ahead.
Yeah, I was raised a Baha'i, and you know, it certainly didn't keep my family from backbiting about other family members, and communication skills are sorely lacking in many families, I think. And so what do you have any suggestions about family backbiting?
Wow. Well, I agree. You know, it's very it's sad. You know, families are sometimes and when it happens within a family too, like not just about the outside world, but within, it's very, very hurtful. It makes it really hard to think about the world as your family, right? When your family is so challenged sometimes. Gosh, I mean, it's, you know, it's hard to tell your family to change, right? It's sometimes easier to talk to a friend than your family when you know, it's like you're trying to up your practice, your spiritual obligation. Like, you know what, I'm trying not to do that. So that's really challenging. Again, praying about it, and, you know, when you have the chance to be the example, especially with the younger generation, you know, if young people get a really strong example of not doing that, it could possibly be cured in a generation like that, right? You know, we just don't do that. We don't talk bad about people. That's the first thing that comes to mind. When it's already a habit, it's very challenging, and I'd love to know if anyone else has thoughts about that.
I know
it's really important.
Yeah, I know of a Baha'i who had told me years ago that they have family members, brothers, you know, sisters, and in-laws who were Baha'is, and like them, and that their own siblings would backbite to their wives and husbands about this person. And this person found that they couldn't even go to the locals, the nearest spiritual assembly, because they one of them found, like, you know, they could not believe that their sibling would do something like that, would talk about them in such a bad way. So what this person had to do was just take up roots and move as far away as possible. from their siblings and their wives and husbands, so that they rarely see them now.
Wow.
Mhm.
I think one of the most difficult things to do is to have the courage to talk to someone about what they're doing. And it's easier to talk to your friend about it. So I think we have to have the courage to, you know, if your sister is doing something crazy and you need to talk to her face to face, because it builds up these barriers that we can't break through anymore until that is, it's like a sticky residue that doesn't go away. And you really need to be open with people and honest, and you need to love them. And that needs to come where everything else comes from, is from a loving nature.
I also know sometimes when you say, I don't want to backbite, I don't want to gossip, people can get offended. It's kind of like when somebody, you know, owes you money and then you're like, hey, do you have the $15? And they're like, get mad at you, right? Because they owe you money. It's sort of like that. Sometimes, I guess, like, even if it's done tactfully, sometimes people feel like a little shamed or put on the spot, like you're being the good person by saying you don't want to backbite. That's also something that you might encounter. And I think for that, I mean, of course, you want to try to do it with tact and not at all like you're, you know, shaming or trying to say that you're better than someone or anything. But just know that sometimes, you know, backbiting is a lower nature activity. So if you call it for what it is, you might still catch someone in that lower nature energy, and they might, you know, kind of bite you a little bit. And just, I wouldn't let that be a hindrance from actually trying to uphold this law, right? You know, we know what Baha'u'llah has said. We know what Abdul Baha has said and Shoghi Effendi about this. So just, you know, be loving, but don't let them like intimidate you into getting back into gossiping to, like, you know, be at their level or whatever. Just a funny phenomenon I've seen or heard other people share a couple times.
I just know that a woman had written about this, that although she didn't say whether she was Baha'i or not, she said that she was saying that she was involved with a group of women who were mothers of young children like her. And one of the women had backbited about someone, and she stood up to this woman and said very politely, you know, she really doesn't think that's necessary, talking about that person behind their back like that. So the other mother just simply had nothing to do with her again.
Gail, you have your hand up.
Okay. Some in our culture, you know, we're told to not keep everything inside, because it affects us and can cause depression. And being sort of in the counseling field, you were told that it's okay to vent. But one of the things that I found, that when you do vent, it keeps you from taking it to God and praying about it.
Wow.
And that's the first important, you know, because after you've gone to talk about it and vent, and then you take it to God, the first person, or the person, not person, you know what I mean, but the first that we should consult to take it to, you know, and sometimes it's hard, you know, it's easier said than done, but to take it, you know, take it to God in prayer.
That's incredible.
And then we may not have to go and vent. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sam and Stuart, you have your hands raised. I don't know if you wanted to say something.
Stuart, you want to go ahead first, please?
Sure. I just wanted to share a third-hand story. So this is a positive thing. This is kind of a one example of how an individual addressed backbiting. This individual was approached by coworkers to let this individual know that another coworker was talking about them. Right. So you've got one person talking and other people listening, and these other people listening come to the person that's being talked about. The person being talked about responded with, I don't talk bad about me. I don't talk bad about you. I don't talk bad about anybody. I just talk about the good things. So let's talk about the good things. And that's how that individual addressed the potential of backbiting or other people talking about any aspect of it. And that went over very well. So that's just one way to address it.
I had a manager several years ago who felt that, I mean, we all were aware of it, that other co-workers just didn't care for him. And that he felt, well, that they just, although they were hard workers and all, he just knew that they were not in his corner really as a manager. So he had a private talk with me one day in his office, and he asked me if I could always come to him to tell him what the others said about him.
Uh-oh.
And I said, no.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
That's a terrible position to be asked to.
I was told too by an, I think it was an employee specialist who's a counselor. They said to me at the time that that's what immature managers do.
Shelley, you have something?
And Sam too.
I just wanted to say that the quotations and the faith in entirety really asks us to observe wisdom. So when somebody is backbiting in front of me about a situation, it's very important to read the person that is speaking. This, you know, if I am listening to somebody who's in pain, it's very tricky, of course, to tell them, please, I am not into backbiting. That's a very challenging thing to do. And it would be worthy to just absorb what they are saying. Perhaps read prayers, one or two prayers at the end of the interaction. And then at another opportunity is to share, when there's no backbiting session, with the people around you, what your values are around gossip and backbiting. Not in the interaction itself, because it doesn't matter what, it will alienate the person. And if it's a light gossip, you can shut it down with a joke and whatever, and you move on. But if, you know, when John was saying earlier, somebody's talking to you and they have made a decision to, you don't know, they choose you in particular, that they choose three people. Let's say they chose you in particular. You can't shut them. And I often think, what would Abdu'l-Baha do with, you know, he had 10,000 people walk in his funeral, 10,000 people. I remember doing the math once. That's 1 in 70 people who lived in Palestine at that time. 1 in 70 people. So count the population of the United States and take 1 in 70 walked in the funeral of the master. He listened and heard everyone. And I find it very hard that he would, as he's trying to stop the gossip, that he would fault find the person in front of him and pick on them and say, you know, anything that would sound self-righteous or would sound more superior to the person that's in front of them. So I think wisdom is very important to balance whatever laws we're trying to apply.
I think I was up next. I like so much of what people have said, and I think that, you know, I keep building up. One thing after another is building for me about how this topic is approached. What Gail said about taking it to God first and having a sin covering eye makes me think about who do I want to be as a human being, and that I always want to be contributing to unity, always. So I ask myself that, is what I want to say, or how, what Sam just said about using wisdom in a situation. How can I contribute to the unity and in that moment? Taking it to God first. I mean, I keep thinking that how do you become a person that has a sin covering eye so that you're not in the position of wanting to speak badly of somebody, is already having that understanding part when we go out into the world. That all of these things about what is really is to be a Baha'i, that it's not just about obeying a law, and I always believe in obeying the law. But who do I have to be so that it doesn't become such a challenge? I can be out with people and I'm seeing them with compassion and understanding and not making judgments of them, even if they're the ones that say are engaged in backbiting, that I could have some way to intercede in that moment, using wisdom and using kindness and compassion, all of those principles. To obey the law, but also to be able to do it with, I don't know, a sweeter tone, I guess.
Just to piggyback off of what Sam was saying in terms of, which makes a lot of sense to me, is that, you know, if you're with a group of friends and they know you, they know your values. I think that's what helps a lot of people that are trying to be tactful in preventing backbiting, is that people need to know who you are, what do you stand for, and what are your values. So it gets to a point where people say, well, there's no sense of talking to Britt about that, because, you know, he doesn't gossip about anybody, so there's no sense of talking to him. You know, it gets to that point where that's the kind of atmosphere that you've set up for yourself. And so I've been in situations where, and I work at a hospital, okay, and I deal with a lot of patients and what have you, and you know, my coworkers are constantly, you know, prejudging and this, that, and the other. And I had to find myself just walking away. I just had to walk away. I just couldn't stay in that atmosphere anymore, because it was too toxic, you know. So yeah, it's very difficult, and you know, we just have to find tactful ways of combating this. But at the same time, I feel we need to continuously build up the good around us.
Yeah, co-workers can be among the worst backstabbers out there.
The workplace can be very challenging, especially for this issue for sure.
I work at the hospital with Britt as well, and I believe that our building is very gossipy, and it's overwhelming at times. And sometimes I just stay shut, or it's just very, very hard. Everything's confidential because you do have your patients that are struggling with stuff, and then you're trying to give them good advice and say, it's going to be all right, so on and so forth. But like I said, it's very, very hard. I mean, it's very, very hard, and it's toxic, like Britt said, but they get the message with Britt. Let me tell you, when they know that he's not going to gossip about it, they don't even bother. And they'll even say, didn't Britt tell you so-and-so? I said, no, my husband doesn't gossip about stuff like that. And they said, yeah, you're right. He is that way. He doesn't want to get involved, but it's very, very hard. Like everybody talks, and it gets very discouraging. It overwhelms you. And it's difficult. It's really difficult.
So
And
you're
my
saying
boss hired me and told me, I'm letting you know about this unit. They talk a lot. He informed me before he even hired me how it was going to be.
So you're saying Britt is not fun, huh?
No. He doesn't get involved.
No, but listen. Oh wait, listen. Listen. I'm human. I'm human. I'm just as human as everybody here. I have my moments.
It's hard.
But it's so hard. I try to be very conscientious. I'm very, very conscientious of it, because it's like Jacqueline had showed us. Yeah. It's the most great sin. So it's like, and yeah. I can only imagine when the time comes after we've transitioned out of this world, all of our sins are going to be shown to us. So it's.
And another thing I'm struggling with, I have one coworker that always criticizes, and she's very bossy, and I always talk back to her, and I should just ignore her, but it really infuriates me that she's telling me certain things to do that is really irrelevant, and it has nothing to do with the job. And I really, try to say some prayers to calm myself down, but it can be so trying sometimes. I mean, we have to deal with the COVID and everything else, and then you got people telling you where to plug in your phone just to charge it. Was like, wow, so I pray a lot, and they don't want you to say, I'll pray for you, at the job, but I do, I'll pray for you, because it's important to pray, and it keeps your sanity, because there's times where I just want to pull my hair out of my head, and I just go, nope, say, a prayer, remover of difficulty, say something, and you'll feel a lot better mentally, because people will try you, they will.
What comes to mind is that, not only do we have the pressures of ordinary life, which already existed, and then especially you guys in healthcare with the pandemic situation and all the layers to that. So on top of the stress of everyday life, and plus the day and age in which we live, those of us here, we're also Baha'is and trying to completely transform society from the inside out. And I think this topic is one of those things where it seems small. Again, it's just chit chat, in the break room or whatever, or within, families in a home. It's just backbiting. And yet we have this really clear guidance. And it's like, it's so counterculture, right? We wouldn't be on this call this long trying to discover tools to have in our pockets for, next time we encounter this. But, as Baha'is, we really are trying to transform society. And, we can't expect that's going to be easy all the time,
You have to remember that people don't know. the principles behind backbiting and how serious it is. They don't know the damage that they're doing.
It's our responsibility. I mean, those of us who know, right? To change the climate and be an example. It's a great point, Judy.
Yes. That was kind of what I wanted to say too, is that it is one of the most important. It has to do with oneness and unity and healing, and as Baha'is, we are if there's a culture, you use the word, the culture of backbiting. And that's what everybody's talking about in their workplaces and in their families, wherever that culture has been permeating, that as Baha'is, we kind of have a responsibility not to just shut it down in our presence, which is kind of a place we all started, I think, to make sure we don't do it and that we don't participate and we're not hearing any of it, but to help share our understanding of how harmful it is, to share that learning we have with the people we work with people we encounter, so that they can have the benefit of getting rid of this in their lives and having greater unity. So I think that's part of it, is that it's not just about shutting down our own behavior, but can we affect this culture of backbiting by memorizing quotes or...
That is beautiful. Transcending it, right? Helping transform and transcend this culture, right?
Yes. So we're about towards the end here, and Jackie, it's huge. This is such a huge topic, and you brought such beautiful writings and sharings with us to I don't know, bring this conversation to the front of our minds, and for us to grow in this. I thank you very much for doing that. I know also that you're a great artist, and I feel like we didn't share any of that. I know it wasn't part of the topic, and you're a wonderful presenter, and we've really enjoyed that. But I really hope everyone will take a look at your website and see the beautiful work you've been doing. And you've written a children's book as well, right?
Yes, the Central Figures wrote it. It's a compilation of quotes from the writings, but I illustrated it. Yes, it's called Noble Beings.
Noble Beings. So everybody look for that. Is it available yet for people to buy?
It is currently sold out, but you can go to my website and get on my email list, and I'll let you know when it's available again.
Oh, fantastic. Does anyone else have any closing remarks?
Just thank you, Jackie, for all that you do.
Thank you. This was awesome. I feel so much more prepared to walk in the world, This was a lot. Yeah, we kind of came to, I think, a really beautiful aha too, as far as we're really trying to transcend it, not just, be above it. Yeah. Cool.
I wanted to share with everyone that we did get an acceptance from the next speaker for next month, who's also an artist.
Cool.
Which, and she, I think, is going to focus on art, which we'd love to have you come back and do just an art. We love the arts, and it deepens our understanding of whatever we're talking about. Her name's Helen Butler. She's from Chicago, outside of right near where the House of Worship is in Evanston, I think. So anyway, that'll be like the 12th or 16th of next month, and so keep your ears and eyes open for that next event. That's all I have to say. Is Hope or anyone else on our planning group, anyone else have anything to say?